Hello, Trojan fans. Welcome to a very special edition of the Peristyle Podcast. Maybe not very special, but everyone is very special. It's special because we were at USC yesterday. It's really starting to happen, people. We were at USC Media Day, where we talked to almost 50 players and all the assistant coaches. Myself, Mr. Triple Double himself, Connor Morrissette, who's joining me today, Chris Trevino, and RJ Abeytia. We were all down on campus, so we want to kind of drop as much knowledge about what we learned at USC Media Day as we can. So it's going to be a fun show for you all, I hope. We are live on YouTube, and we are broadcasting across all of our podcasting platforms. So wherever you're listening or watching us, we do appreciate that. If you are watching us live on YouTube, you can jump in the chat and let us know if you have any questions, if you have some comments. I'll try to put them up on the screen as we go along. And if you have questions you want to send into the show, we're ramping up. We're going to do a lot more shows because, you know, the season's starting here pretty soon. Podcast at uscfootball.com is the email address, or you can call or text us at 424-254-9141. And if you have the Apple Podcasting app or Spotify, if that's how you listen to your podcast, you can leave us 5-star ratings there. We do appreciate that. And if you have Apple Podcasts on your phone or iPad or something like that, you can actually leave us a review. And we love those along with the 5 stars. So if you get a chance to do that, we would appreciate it. And we appreciate very much having Connor Morrissette in studio, ready to go, talking all things. He's going to talk some hoops a little later. He was down at basketball practice today. But Connor, welcome in. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Thank you for having me, Ryan. Excited for another show.
I'm excited too. We have a comment from Michael in the chat. Good energy around the program right now. There is some positive energy. It's been a long off season, and I think fans are ready to get some games going. That energy could die if USC lays an egg in the desert and loses to LSU. But man, build a lot of momentum. I think off this fall camp could build some momentum. But I think the energy is better right now, Connor.
Absolutely. And Lincoln Riley talked a lot about it. Big Ten Media Day the week before. We were there, or not you, but me, Shotgun, Chris were there. We're in Indianapolis, and he said the importance of stacking recruiting classes. And at the Media Day, you just get a sense, talking to a lot of guys who are part of that 2023 class, it's their time now. And this is what Lincoln Riley envisioned. Guys who he recruited from the high school ranks. Yes, there's the portal. Guys come and go, but he wants to do what he wants to do through mainly high school recruiting. I mean, Zachariah Branch is going to have a huge year this year. Deuce Robinson's in a great position. Makai Lemon, Braylon Shelby, Quentin Joyner should lock down the second running back spot. Walker Lyons will be a true freshman tight end. Elijah Page is your left tackle. Jacoby Lane, everyone says he's going to have a big breakout season. Marion Peterson is still here, the running back. Alani Noah could be right guard. Amos Talele is also factoring in there. Elijah Hughes is a guy who a lot of people think is going to have a big year in the middle of that defense. Tobias Raymond provides some depth at tackle. It's time for these guys to shine, and I think earlier on these shows, Ryan, I've talked to you about how it's all about in the trenches, and I still feel that way, but I think another sort of sidebar to all this is how much can you get from that 2023 high school recruiting class this season? And if it's a lot, I think USC will have a strong season. And if it's not as much, they might be in trouble because they're really relying on a lot of these guys in their second year with the program who Lincoln Riley recruited to have big impact. So we'll have to see, and I think that's another fascinating piece.
Yeah, for sure. Fascinating piece. And people were thanking us in the chat for all the content yesterday. Yes, like we said, almost 50 players, 10 assistant coaches, we got a lot of stuff that was gone up on our YouTube channel, but also going up on uscfootball.com. A lot of interesting stories. We definitely had by far the biggest team out there covering it. So we put a lot of content up. If you are a subscriber to the site, thank you very much. If not, this is a great time to join. 60% off an annual membership. So it's $45 or something for the year. It's if I take Connor to lunch after this, it's $45. You get a whole year of content for that. So, well, the way Connor eats too, he does. It might be more than that. But yes, go check it out. It's the best deal. Come on, just go. You want to go sign up. We know you want to. This is an awesome opportunity for you to do that. So go check it out. Tons and tons of content going up there. I had to do the war room last week. I think, beat all the Gerard war rooms, just whatever. No, but Gerard took a vacation last week. But the war room every Friday is a lot of fun. A lot of great analysis going up here, and as fall camp gets going. No better time to go sign up than right now. So go do it. Like I said, it's $45 or something for the whole year. So you will get a whole bunch of enjoyment just reading the Peristyle every day, and check it out. Certainly worth the price of lunch.
One of my friends is a new subscriber, Ryan, and he texted me and said how much he's enjoying it.
Oh, good.
Wanted to be involved in the war room. And I'll say this, last week we had some really good updates, and this week we're going to have some more. So definitely stay tuned. You can only read it if you're a subscriber. And a lot of people listening, I'm sure, already subscribe. But if you don't, no better place to cover USC. Yes, I'm biased, but I read everything. I know that what we're doing is different than everywhere else, and that's a fact.
All right. And so I want to thank all of you guys out there for listening and watching, but I also want to thank our sponsor, Trader Joe's, who've been awesome to us. I had a friend that, Connor, went into surgery, had some family members come out from the Midwest to take care of them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop in Trader Joe's. Picked up, first of all, I got great bouquets of flowers. You can do that, get well soon kind of stuff. That's awesome. Like a bottle of Prosecco, go in there and get something like that. But I went and bought a bunch of snacks. I got her the Ghost pepper chips that I like a lot with the onion dip. The peanut butter cups, got a bunch of those, some different teas, things like that. And it's good. So I just put like a Trader Joe's care package together and dropped it off over there. So I think it was well received. So make sure you get in there. There's so many cool snacks and stuff at Trader Joe's. If you want to make a care package, you got friends, kids going to college, or your kids or something, or anyone you know that going to college, man, go to Trader Joe's, get them a good care package. They'll be taking they'll love it.
Or you could drink some water. I got my Trader Joe's Mountain Spring water.
Oh, nice.
Here.
There you go.
I was in a little bit of a pinch the other night, and I usually like to have a lot of water at my house, and I just run out. So I went over to Trader Joe's and got these big bottles, and they've been keeping me hydrated all week.
Josh in the chat says Trader Joe's has the best tzatziki dip, that the Mediterranean dip, like that. Yeah, that's good stuff. You put it like pita bread. Good stuff. I haven't tried that dip yet. So thanks, Josh. I will go check that out. Okay. We could start, you were just at the hoops thing. Do you want to start with hoops? It's like, here, hold on. Jeff says, how is Ryan not fat? Okay. That just has to be good. Always gorging himself on chips and onion dip, Trader Joe's wine and all that. I do like the Trader Joe's wine. I was looking, it's funny. I opened a bottle last night. I had made some pasta and I was like, oh, I don't have any more of the, like, I usually get the, like a Trader Joe's label, like Pinot Noir. I get a bunch of those and they're like $8, $10, something like that. And I was out. So I'm like, damn, I got to go back and get some more. But I don't know. I do work out a lot, Jeff, but I do like eating their snacks. Thanks for that. But you were down there. They had an open practice this morning. Maybe kind of give people, I think I have a picture of, did I do that? Oh, I'll add a picture in there, but you were down there at practice. Like what was going on down there?
It's the second to last practice of the summer, one more tomorrow morning, and then the guys are off for a little bit. Just off the top, Desmond Claude, the point guard that they brought in from Xavier transfer, he's now healthy. He had some elbow issues on both of his elbows, and he was out for a while. He's playing now, and Eric Musselman said it changes the complexion of the team having him. USC has 14 guys, and 6 were hurt, so it was only 8 today, and the team was really tired after because Musselman really runs them into the ground during these practices. Big injury updates as well. Don't have to get into it too much, but everyone's expected to be back by the beginning of the season, but obviously having 6 guys out wasn't ideal. Kevin Patton, the true freshman from Rancho Christian out there, and Temecula, he hurt his hip, and he's going to be out for 5 months, so I guess maybe he won't be ready for the season, but everyone else will be. And it's just fun to watch Eric Musselman coach and watch those guys practice. They work really hard. It's fast paced. Everything is so pointed. It's very, what's the word that Jamil Muhammad used to me yesterday? It's very intentional. That's what is going on in the football program. That's what's going on in the basketball program as well. So it was nice to catch up with some of the guys after. Eric Musselman said, one of the professors of a summer class the guys are taking, 7 guys are in that class, sent them a really nice message. He called it the nicest email any professor, anyone on a campus he's been at has sent to him regarding his players. So it's similar to the football team. In the offseason, the vibes are always high, but I do have a feeling, Ryan, that these guys actually do like each other, even though they're all so new. I feel the same way about the football program, and hopefully that leads to more wins than losses. But, of course, talent is probably the biggest factor in all that. We'll see how it all comes together for both teams. But I think men's basketball is in a good spot right now. I really do.
If you're watching on YouTube, it took me a while to get the picture up. I had it saved. Like if you save a picture from Twitter, it becomes a TFF file or something. Yeah. It's not a JPEG or GIF file, or not GIF or GIF. and the program I'm using doesn't accept that. So I have to like save it as a JPEG. So I had to save this one, but there's a picture of the team around Musselman at Galen Center. So that's where they did the practice.
Yeah.
Right?
And that excuse me, that was right at the beginning of practice. And that's when he was telling the group about that email. So just fun to be there, and it's nice to build that relationship with a new staff and a new group of players, just kind of show your face, and then when the season comes around, hey, I remember that guy, and that's helpful for what I try to do. So I appreciate them opening up. It's fun to watch the whole hour. I imagine we'll be able to watch a lot during the season too. I wish football did that, but that's a story for a different day. We'll go down there tomorrow, Ryan, and see the stretching and individual work for the first day of fall
Very
camp.
excited to watch stretching tomorrow.
It's a little different, but shout out to those guys over there at USC Athletics, the men and women who work with the basketball team. I felt very taken care of going down there. It's very nice.
Oh, that's good. Love that. And so little hoops coverage in the summer, and then that'll go away for a while, and kind of pop back in. But obviously, football is ramping up. USC fall camp starts on Friday. So Friday
tomorrow,
which is we're recording this on Thursday. We usually do Wednesday, but we had media day. We'll talk about that. But tomorrow will be the first practice. So looking forward to that. We will hear from Lincoln Riley. We got a statement from him on Wednesday at media day. Didn't take any questions. We kind of go over that a little bit, but then we'll get to ask some questions after Friday's practice. No players will be available until next week on Wednesday, but at media day, we talked to a ton of players, and what they did, it was over at USC inside Heritage Hall, the Basher Lounge. This is a picture, if you're watching on YouTube, I put up from Chris Trevino, tweeted out. They had Heisman trophies sitting on the tables, so that was cool. So you get to do your interview with the Heisman trophy sitting on there, right in front of you. So they were kind of bringing those out for it. They actually gave us lunch, which is the first time they've done something like that.
Yeah.
We had Chick-fil-A. Pretty cool. The format was, and I'll put a picture up, like Matt Entz would be up. He's the linebackers coach, up with that backdrop there with a bunch of media kind of around him. And then other players and maybe one other assistant coach would be sitting at those tables, and you could do the interviews with them there. So people could kind of break around and talk to different players. And we tried to have a recorder at every table. There was a lot going on because there were so many players at once. I think 6 different groups, like 11:30, 12, like every half hour. So we had all these guys for a while, and then they'd let them go if there was no more questions. And some players were more popular than others. I tried to stay up like it wasn't a podium, but basically up at the front of the room. And if you watched our YouTube channel, we had live streams of all of the coaches going up there. So it was a lot standing up there and like holding a microphone and stuff. There was a lot going on there. It was a little taxing for a media work day, but it was a big day. We got to hear from a lot of people. And like I said, USC took care of us a little bit, got us some lunch. That was nice. But yeah, overall, it's one of those cool days of covering a lot going on, a lot of content coming out of it, but it was a good day out there.
It's nice to talk to the new players too. I had a chance to speak with Jay Fair, the Auburn receiver transfer, for about 20 minutes, and the same with Greedy Vance, the defensive back from Florida State. He was really well media trained because I just tried to ask him what position he was going to play, and he told me that's a question for Coach Riley. So he knows the secrets. Don't give anything away. On the flip side, Jay Fair, he was awesome to speak with, and I asked him, is Miller the guy? And he said, yeah. So I don't think they got to him yet, but I thought that was really interesting. And it was great to catch up with those guys. A ton of takeaways, too. I thought talking to Jamil Muhammad, Bear Alexander, and Mason Cobb was unique because those were guys who were brought in to fix the defense last year. And all 3 of them had some really nice moments, but as we all know, the defense really didn't do very well collectively a season ago. So it was interesting to ask them, hey, what are some of the differences? And I thought Jamil Muhammad had the most interesting quote. He talked about how with Eric Henderson, we work on the same thing all the time. That may sound like it sucks, and it may sound like it's boring, but it's really not. If it gets boring to you, that's when you know it's working in a way. If you were able to look at our practices last season and then look at our spring practices with this new staff, you wouldn't know which was during the season. Our spring practices now look so much more like the season, and that's no slight to whoever last year. I just think there's a little bit more intention behind the drill work. There's a little bit more intention behind everything we do. And that sort of bled into some of the strength and conditioning stuff where we hear all the guys talking about how, yes, we're bulking up, we're working out all the time, we're eating differently, but we're doing a lot more football-specific exercise compared to last year when maybe they weren't doing as much football-specific stuff, just overall athleticism stuff and other things like that. So there's clearly been a huge change, and that's what happens when you hire a bunch of new coaches. It's interesting to sort of hear some of the ins and outs of what that change looks like, and I'm excited to see what happens on the field because it's one thing to say everything, it's another thing to do it, and that's the next step here.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at big changes and you want to change some things when you go 7-5 in the regular season, one of them is the new defensive staff. So we got to hear from all of those guys. The other one was really how their bodies were changed, and we'll get into that second. But I think maybe we can kind of go over some of the stuff on the defensive side of the ball. We got to hear from, I put the picture up of Matt Entz up there. I thought he did a really good job. He was the last one there, talking about, just moving from, being this head coach entity to now coaching the linebackers. He's like, hey, I'm the head coach of the linebackers. And that's the sort of the way he looks at it. It was interesting because it sounded like, from what he was saying, like he actually gives feedback to Lincoln Riley. He was a championship level, multiple time national champion winner at the FCS level. I talked to him, asked him about recruiting stuff a little bit and, working in there, but just overseeing a program, even at a different level, you have, I think, different insights than maybe others would. And to see, his answers about talking about collaborating with Lincoln Riley and being able to say, if he was going to do something, we did that and it worked great, and it's like, okay, so you've tried this at a, if you're going to try something new, or we did that and it didn't work well and here's why. And being able to kind of share that sort of insight with Lincoln Riley, who's a young head coach himself, building on the experience and all that. It seemed like there was collaboration there. And I didn't get a super sense that like, hey, our practice is a lot different because D'Anton Lynn comes in and Doug Belk was a defensive coordinator and Matt Entz was a head coach. And do they want to tweak the way things are practicing? Entz probably got the closest to talking about that with the sort of like feedback back and forth with Lincoln Riley and sharing that. So I think if you're looking for things to like be switched up a little bit, that would be some indication that maybe that is going to happen.
And to add to that, RJ talked to Tyler Robles, one of the kickers, and he said that Matt Entz has been doing a lot of special team stuff because of that head coaching background. And everything that you just said, Ryan, it sounds exactly like RJ's conversation with Tyler. They were just talking about he had all these new ideas. Here's what worked at my old stopping grounds. Here's what I think we can do here, tweaks. That should be music to USC fans' ears because not only have the Trojans made a lot of improvements roster-wise on special teams, bringing in Hank Pepper, the snapper, bringing in some punters to challenge Eddie Chaplicki, bringing in the Georgia Southern transfer kicker Michael Lance to push Dennis Lynch. There's more competition now, but it sounds like there are a lot more ideas, and Entz is a big part of that. And that didn't even register with me that a guy who is the linebacker coach who has head coaching experience, like of course he has special teams ideas because he did this at his last job for however many years he was the head coach. That clicked with me yesterday. I thought that was interesting, and that gets me a little bit excited about special teams, and I never get excited about special teams.
Yeah, no, I don't usually either. I'm mostly just like harp on it, like, yep, they're terrible at this. Why they stink at that, and why you're putting all these resources into it. But having someone with head coaching experience sort of help out there, I think would be a huge plus. It was cool hearing from Doug Belk and some, his experience, hearing from D'Anton Lynn and, some of the guys that he's worked with. And for Lynn, I think the most impressive thing to me is coming from the NFL to make that transition to college and not only do it quickly, but be super effective as a defensive coordinator. A lot of NFL guys take a while to get used to, like, oh, you can't do this. It's like he seemed to know, and he has the relationship with Eric Henderson. I think they worked in the same circles, and I think it was with the Chargers, or I forget what he said, but it's just some of the connections that he had there. But he's impressive to me, and the biggest part of that being that, yeah, you were an NFL guy, and somehow you figured out the college game like right away without taking a lot of time. Like, oh, we only get 20 hours a week with these guys. What's going on? So that's been impressive to me. And every time you hear him speak, you're like, all right, I just feel like this is going to go well. Like, guys understand what they need to do. They're not going to be confused. He's going to put them in, the theme was they were going to put these guys in a position to succeed, which I don't think has really been the case the last couple of years.
Mason Cobb said D'Anton Lynn is a football genius and the best teacher of football that he's ever dealt with. Lincoln Riley, when we talked with all the new coaches way back in the spring before spring practice, that was one of the big emphases with him. We need not only good coaches, good recruiters, but we need good teachers, and we need guys who are going to come in and mold players into doing exactly what they want them to do. And again, we got to see it, but it sounds like D'Anton Lynn, the way he teaches, it really resonates with a lot of these guys. And Cobb had another funny quote about how Lynn is really quiet, and he's not like a lot of the coaches he's been around in that way, where instead of yelling at you, he'll pull you over to the side and just kind of talk to you a little bit. And I think in 2024, that matters, where the yeller coach who makes you feel like crap, I don't really know how much that resonates anymore with a lot of these kids. It's not a blanket statement, of course. Different methods work for different people. I do believe, though, as time goes on and people continue to change and generations change, I firmly believe that that's a better leadership style than that old school coach who, we're doing it my way, and I'm yelling at you, and my way or the highway. Talking with Entz, too, and Cobb, he mentioned how Entz actually asked them for feedback from the linebackers, and it's a symbiotic relationship more so than a commander, and then you got the soldiers below. It's a different kind of hierarchy. So that's interesting to me. Overarching point, Ryan, media day, it's great to hear what you want to hear, and I know the fans are excited, and I'm excited too. I want to see what this defense looks like. The defensive line, all the guys alongside Barry Alexander who we talked to, they know that there are questions there, and they just keep saying, we got to prove it, we got to prove it, we got to prove it. I'm sort of switching gears here. Everyone has to prove it, and that's Lynn going to a new place. That's all these transfers who were here last year, it didn't quite work out, who have a lot of talent. They need to prove it in this new system. The newer transfers who weren't here last season, they're in a new place. They need to prove it. Unproven guys who maybe will get a bigger role this year. There are just so many question marks in that way, and I like a lot of what USC did this offseason. You just got to see it on the field, of course.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding,
yes,
as they say.
Yes.
I don't know. It's one of those old sayings, but I do like pudding. I'm kind of hungry now. I could do some pudding. Yeah, and so I think the big aspect, we'll talk about the offense and stuff a little bit too, but on the defensive side, new players. I love the point that you made of like, there was guys brought in last year that were trying to fix, a Mason Cobb, like, hey, fix the tackling problems. Okay. Or miss a ton of tackles or, like all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of, I think, changes for the positive on the defensive side. And I think roster improved in the secondary for sure. And there's depth at the linebacker spot, not as deep at defensive line, but you're hoping the overall scheme is going to get better. The understanding, like I said, putting people in a position to win. So on that aspect of things, you're like, all right, D'Anton Lynn took pretty much the same group of talent that at UCLA from 2022 to 2023 and made them a lot better. I think they tried to improve the talent a little bit on defense, especially in the secondary. Will he be able to make this defense better? I mean, it's hard to get worse. We thought you couldn't get worse after 2022. They did in 2023 or very close. The other aspect, though, and you talk about, okay, well, they don't have as much depth on the defensive line. So let's put like 20 pounds on a lot of these guys. So Nate Clifton can be an inside guy now. Eric Henderson was saying he could play up and down. He could play all over the place. But when we talked to him, it was like he was going to play inside. But they were talking about this multiple kind of stuff. I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm going to put up some pictures if you're watching on YouTube. Otherwise, you can see on social media. Like there was, Eric Gentry photos where he's added, I think it was 182 pounds to, body weight 206 pounds to 220 pounds, and his lean mass was 182 to 187. So I mean, like, that was Eric Gentry. Braylon Shelby, he went from 236 to 265, and I'm putting the pictures up there now. So Eric Gentry's on the left, The picture had his head cut off. I don't know why, but they just. But he looks ripped, and Shelby looks like just a different human being, in his. Those are pretty big. There's one with Miller Moss who's put on, he put a little bit of weight, but the Woody Marks looks like an Adonis, like he could be on one of those American Gladiator shows, going up to 210 pounds, and Zachariah Branch could be in a Dolce & Gabbana commercial after what he's doing. Like he's up to 175 pounds and absolutely ripped. But if you're watching on YouTube, I'll show you some of the pictures of that stuff. But the transformations look pretty ridiculous. It's good, right? Like if they've added, I forget, they tweeted out, it was like over 1,000 pounds or something they added. But you didn't change strength and conditioning coaches, and you didn't change head coaches. So like, what changed? You're like, we got to do something different. Applaud them for doing something different. I'm not sure why this wasn't done before, but the other aspect of this is the guys you have might be better because of what they've done in the offseason.
And I'm just curious, how much ground does everyone need to make up? Because that first game against LSU, they have the amazing 2 tackles. They're going to try to run the ball with their good running back room, their really good offensive line, down USC's throat, a team that could not stop the run last season. So they've bulked up. They've added some new pieces, not as many as they would have liked. They're doing everything correctly, but how far away were they last year? And are these strength gains going to be enough to stop a really good, what is on paper, a really good LSU rushing attack? Because that room for them is deep. I was looking at their depth chart the other day. The 2 tackles that they have, one of them might be the first tackle off the board. I think their left tackle, his name is escaping me, but they're known for having 2 really, really good tackles coming into the season.
2 of the best in the country, yeah.
Pete Thamel of ESPN, he went on their national college football show the other day, and he just said, can USC stop the run? That's going to be LSU's game plan, ground and pound. And if USC can, it'll be a game. If they can, it might be a long afternoon. I think there's a little bit more that goes into it, but that makes a lot of sense to me. They struck out on some guys in the portal. Yes, they've added weight. That should be good, but week 1, you're not playing Utah State. You're playing an LSU team that they also had some question marks coming out of last season, and they're in a prove-it year a little bit as well. So I think that's a fascinating matchup, and I'm really excited to see it because if LSU can move the ball on the ground effectively, that would make me really nervous if I'm a USC fan.
Yeah, but I think they've done a good job putting those like mugshot, like wait, it's like no nonsense. Like here's a picture, this is what he looked like before, this is what he looked like afterwards, and
it's creating more buy-in, and they need all the help they can get, with all due respect, after last season. So I think that's a smart move too. LSU week 1, no one's going to care how jacked everyone is if they rush for 300 yards on the ground. That's all I'm saying. Right?
Yeah, 100%. They did, but they look better.
Yeah,
which on one side is kind of concerning too, right? Because like what's changed? Like why didn't this happen before? But
speed defense, baby.
Yeah, I think it's a little concerning too if it was all about what the defensive coordinator wanted and you could have been doing this kind of stuff, but that's not what the philosophy was. So for USC fans, like they love the Pete Carroll era. If you remember what like the Norm Chow offenses were like, I mean, they were a lot of fun, obviously, but they weren't complicated. You went from Paul Hackett, who was an NFL guy and had a thick ass playbook. He was doing like these really hard workouts. He was trying to be more NFL like, and it just didn't resonate. It didn't work. Didn't matter if you had Carson Palmer as your quarterback. Like it just wasn't an effective like college offense. He was trying to do NFL stuff in college, and Norm Chow was like, I'm going to do something that's very simple for my players to understand, but it looks complicated to the defense. Like you kind of need something like that in college, and you feel like that's D'Anton
but they had the
Lynn.
best players.
They also had the best players.
That makes all the difference.
Well, they also had really good players with Paul Hackett too, and that didn't matter. Like having a great philosophy certainly helps. And I think sometimes you're just embracing the game. Like I used to watch with my ex like a bunch of like reality shows, and we might have talked about this before, but it would be like the fashion design show. I forget what it was called, like Project Runway. Like you'd watch things like that. Like I don't know diddly about making clothes or some of the cooking shows and stuff. And a lot of the times it's just like following, like what is the objective of this? Like if you're designing something for like high school prom and you're thinking fashion forward and you need to do something and you're like, no, you're going to make them the laughing stock. You have to kind of follow like what's going to work for this situation. And so sometimes you can't get out of your own head. I designed this way. I don't care if I need to make hamburgers for a softball team. I'm thinking about, a tasting menu at a 3-star Michelin restaurant in New York. Like you have to think, well, what's the situation? It doesn't call for that. And I think in the college game, it just calls for something different than the NFL. And you have to, if you have the best schemes possible, but if your players don't get it, and if they're looking at their wristbands and try to figure out what to do, it's not a good scheme. And I think Alex Grinch never got it, didn't make the adjustments. I think we've seen even Lincoln Riley's offensive kind of suffer from some of that a little, and he would instantly see it and change it, And Alex Grinch, the whole season didn't change it. What was the one where you have like a defensive end was covering
Utah, Sione Vaki,
out of the backfield. Yeah. He kept doing it, and they didn't change it. It was like, well, if they do that matchup, that's not a good matchup for us. Like, or you could change what you're doing, and he never would change. I feel like with D'Anton Lynn, long kind of ramble into this, it's more about how do we make this something digestible for these players so that they can go out there and play like a bat out of the hell to the best of their ability, as opposed to here's the great scheme and they just need to figure it out and make it work. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense to me. I just wonder when USC did have some of those misses in the portal, they really tried to enhance that defensive line. Like you wring out a towel, there's only so much water in that towel.
True.
There's only so much talent on this roster. And with D'Anton Lynn, it's going to be fascinating to see how he puts these guys in the best position to succeed. But say he does put them in the best position to succeed, eventually they just have to go out and make plays. And it comes down to the guys on the field. And I'm so curious about, does USC have enough in the trenches defensively where Lynn might put them in a good spot, but can they make the play? That's the season, man.
Yeah, I don't think talent's been the
no, and they're not bad, but like Bear Alexander is a NFL caliber prospect for sure. Everyone else on the defensive line, Braylon Shelby, in an ideal world, is he? Yes. Could he have a breakout season? Everyone seems to think so. I'd love to see it too. He has a really high ceiling. Outside of those two, you're banking on a lot that needs to go right. LSU in the middle of their defense, that great linebacker, Perkins, like he's a 5-star guy, top 10 recruit in his class. You just don't have a lot of guys that it'll help if the coach puts them in a great position to succeed, but sometimes you just need those really, really good players to go out and just make plays. And with me, I'm curious to see Lynn is going to put these guys in the best positions. I'm not debating that. He proved it last season. When they're in that spot, what's it going to look like?
Yeah. So big changes on defense. Body composition, that's like one of those topics. I guess cohesion has been another kind of big topic where people are like team chemistry. Transfer Central in 2022 was actually really good. Like Travis Dye and Jordan Addison and Caleb Williams, they sort of brought people together and it worked. And for whatever reason, returning Heisman winner, the chemistry wasn't quite there last year. And they feel like it's kind of getting back to that. And, we'll see how important that is. But the feeling you get from talking to the guys is that, a lot of dudes are on the same page, even with a bunch of new faces. Guys like, Kyle Ford coming back to the program. But it seems like the cohesion is better than maybe, for whatever reason, just didn't seem to click last year.
Bear Alexander said yesterday, the best thing about this team is how connected guys are just in terms of going around the locker room. You see a lot of joking and laughing. I think the connection piece is big. And then when I spoke to Greedy Vance, who has only been at campus about a month after transferring from Florida State, he said he loved the plan from D'Anton Lynn and the scheme. That's why he committed to USC, ultimately signed. But now that he's been here, he talked to a lot of the guys who starred in the Holiday Bowl, and he asked them what was different about that game compared to how the season ended. And that gave him a lot of confidence because so many of those guys who were so impactful in that game are back and they were all on the same page. That gave Vance a lot of confidence that he was in the right place because they really did come together. And winning that game, I don't think anyone on our staff picked him to win the game, Ryan, because of how poorly that season ended. We were kind of shut out from covering that team. They would just practice for 5 weeks. There wasn't a whole lot of media availability. We didn't get to see that transformation. I think that had something to do with it as well. but that cohesion, it started in the Holiday Bowl. And if USC goes on and has a really great season, I think that Holiday Bowl performance, it gets even bigger in fans' eyes. Right now, it's just kind of a nice note to end the season, and people are excited, but maybe a little cautiously optimistic, which I understand. If USC has a great season, that was the changing point. Losing to UCLA and then taking all that time before the Holiday Bowl, getting on the same page, and then you use that momentum to have a great season the following year, that could be one of the defining games in Lincoln Riley's tenure. Seemed like Greedy Vance was hinting at that a little bit. I'm excited to see if they can do that.
I am too, because leading up to the Holiday Bowl, and I think I got COVID or something.
Yeah,
right before
I think
I couldn't go, so I didn't get to be there in person. Yeah, I got like COVID at the end of the year, and it was like it felt like a throwaway game. Felt like, well, we got to do this. It's really not going to mean much, and
for a lot of teams, that is the bowl game. They don't give a crap. I think Riley, we can criticize him, and I do sometimes on the show for sure, like you would any coach. He deserves a lot of credit for what he did in that whole staff, guys choosing to stick around when they knew their job was on the line or that they weren't going to have a job after that game. They took that really, really seriously because they knew how badly they messed up the weeks before and the months before, I should say, to end that season. And the fans desperately needed something to hang on to, and they got that. So shout out to the staff for that. I felt like they could have just thrown in the towel. They didn't, and I thought that was really unique and a really good story heading into this season. So sorry I cut you off.
No, that's fine. Bowl games don't always, it depends if you care about it or not. And USC obviously cared about it, but I thought Louisville did too. They came off the Florida State loss in the ACC championship game. They still had one of the top-rated defenses, and I think that part mattered. But USC, there was a level of motivation there, and I think they needed it. There was, and you mentioned this too, the way USC finishes seasons hasn't been good. So that was one, that's one aspect of the end of the season. Like, you actually finished good. Like, things could have probably been different if you beat Tulane in that Cotton Bowl. But losing to Utah twice and all that, and the injury for Caleb Williams, everything, you needed something better. But to start off the season last year, but gets a bunch of cupcakes and going undefeated and then losing 5 of your last 6 or whatever it was. Yeah, you needed something positive for the offseason. And that's good, because they haven't had a lot of positives, the hiring the defensive staff and that win. And how much can that carry over? And how much of that is a window into the future of USC football? And, some of the players talked about that, right? Where it's like, this were a bunch of young guys playing. This looks like what this team could be. And you're hoping that they play at a high level like they did, in the Holiday Bowl. Tackled better. The offense was really good. Cohesion was there. So you're hoping that can be a precursor to what's going to happen this season.
And that goes back to what I said off the top of the show, was a lot of that 2023 class that stepped up. It was Jacoby Lane catching 2 touchdowns, Deuce Robinson catching a touchdown, Mekhi Lemon with a couple big receptions, Elijah Page playing a lot of left tackle. Really important pieces for this season, sort of getting their start, because Lane played a little bit more at the end of the year. Deuce Robinson was sort of in and out of the lineup. He probably had the biggest usage out of any of those freshman receivers. But in those games, remember, Ryan, I'm sure you did watching it, like it was all the older receivers in the first series, and I think USC punted, and then Lincoln Riley said, all right, enough of this. Let's put in the younger guys, and then that kind of got things going, and Miller Moss goes on and throws for the 6 touchdowns. So another example of if that can springboard you into the Big Ten and you have a good season, that gave you some belief. Staff deserves a lot of credit, because that could have been a throwaway for sure.
Any sort of insight on the offensive side of the ball from yesterday?
I think Miller is beloved more than I thought. Jay Fair talked about how when he got here, Miller texted all the receivers and said, hey, we got a new guy. Let's go out and throw. And that not only allowed Fair to meet some teammates, but they actually got to work the second he was there. And I really do believe having a good head on your shoulders and being a leader is, of course, important in any aspect of football. But when it's the quarterback, when it's a guy who has waited his turn, people just really respect him. And the talent was there. We saw in the bowl game, he threw 6 touchdowns. So it's going to be different than Caleb, of course. Like I've said on the show many times, Ryan, I feel about as good as I possibly can with a starting quarterback who only has 1 start in his college career taking over. Now, is that going to be a Heisman situation? Probably not. Wouldn't rule it out with Lincoln Riley's pedigree, though, so we'll see about that. I do feel really good about Moss. The team feels really good about him, and I think that's exciting for fans for sure.
Yeah, I think it is exciting. I got to talk to Luke Heward a while, and I think I'd asked him about, have you ever had a transition where you go from like a legendary quarterback to the next guy having to take over? And he just wanted to kind of look forward. But it seems like everyone's sort of now looking forward to, what the future is going to be with, Miller Moss at quarterback. And I think they're pretty excited. You need a defense to take a big step forward. Certainly, I think you just need the offense to not take a big step backward. Like a small step backward is fine. Being a top 7 offense instead of top 3 in the country, like you're going to probably win a lot of games, but you can't go from, top 5 to 25. I think that would be too big of a step back.
I did think it was interesting. Josh Henson, he was asked about right guard, and Alani Noah, I believe, started at left guard against San Jose State that first game last season as a true freshman. And then now he's in the mix with like Micah Banuelos and Gino Quinones, who I don't think is totally healthy. He kept saying when we asked him, ask coach, even though Lincoln Riley says he is, it doesn't seem like he's healthy. So he's in the mix. Amos Talele is in this mix. The right guard, it's a little bit of a question mark. Besides the right guard, at right tackle, it's Mason Murphy. And then behind him, I guess, is Tobias Raymond. We've talked about this a ton, Ryan. The offensive line depth, it's a concern. But then the right side of that line, too, I like Mason Murphy a lot. And he's, when called upon, has done a nice job. He hasn't started the year as a starter in his career. Now he'll get that opportunity. But really not knowing what's going to happen at right guard and just the depth there, that has to be a concern as well. Jonah Monheim at Big Ten Media Day said, we just got to roll with the punches. Whatever happens, happens. That's another really interesting angle because I think one injury they're in trouble, and they could be in trouble. I don't mean to be an alarmist if there aren't any injuries. I just don't know a lot about that talent on that group. You're relying on some young players to fill some big roles. And on the offensive line, it's just different. Your body needs to come along. And I don't know if you can, not that they're rushing guys into starting roles in their second year, but it's a little concerning that you have 2 for sure second-year guys starting in Elijah Page, and I think it's going to be Alani Noah on that line. And you need both those guys to play really, really well. I hope they can. I have a little bit more confidence in Page than I do whoever wins the right guard spot, but it's a concern for sure.
Yeah, I got to talk to Noah a little bit, and it was interesting. He got up to like 350, he said, during the season, so I don't think that was a good place. He's back down to like 330-ish or so. But it was so weird for him to start the opener, and then
that was bizarre.
And you just don't see him again for a long time, and you're like, what's going on here? For a true freshman, that was weird. Like that was like red flags were going off. Like something is not right. Like why is this happening? And he talked like I feel like the young guys are still developing. Like maybe Page is the most sort of well-rounded offensive lineman from that group. Noah talked to me about. He feels really comfortable run blocking, and the pass blocking is still an issue. Obviously, in this offense, you got to be a really good pass blocker, and I think that's something like still in development for him. But they're going to need some of these young guys to step up. Not everyone's going to be healthy all season. If you like 6 or 7 of the guys, but a couple guys get hurt, you can't have this huge drop off because you went to the number 8 guy and they're just not ready. So I think this is for Josh Henson, you got to get a lot out of a lot of these players and give yourself a really confident 2 deep that maybe we're not seeing right now, but they feel like, hey, these 10 guys can play. And so if whoever goes down, we can do something with it.
And we talked about it at the lunch we went to, Ryan, over the weekend, the Trojan Coaches Club. We can hit on that. That was a great event. Just how the offensive line, in my opinion, they had some defensive line recruiting misses, of course, but the high school recruiting misses that USC has had under Lincoln Riley, the offensive line, this is the season, in my opinion, where you're really going to see that. Yeah,
for sure. Let's see, where are we at? Let's take a quick break. We want to talk about the Trojan Coaches Club because we both spoke at that, and then the turf, we'll get some questions and stuff. So why don't we do this? We will take a quick break and be back in a minute. All righty, we're back here. We're 45 minutes in. I don't know how that happened.
Good discussion, baby.
Good stuff. We like about that. I do want to talk. Lincoln Riley talked about USC building the best facilities in college football, which I don't know if I buy that because people just throw all kinds of money around at this stuff. But USC's will certainly be getting better. And I'll put a picture up of the turf field. So I guess they're going to play on grass that they have and then tear that up after fall camp. They're building the new baseball facility over there. I heard it's going to be really nice. But they're going to have 2 side-by-side fields here. And I think this turf one, which is a picture, is done. But it looks pretty cool to me.
It's cool that there are going to be 3 fields for a little bit, and then it'll get cut up. I was kind of confused about it, so I could just read from Shotgun's article here. USC will have full usage of the natural surface of Howard Jones Field, the new turf field, as well as Brian Kennedy Field, the half-length turf field that runs on the south side perpendicular to Howard Jones Field. But Brian Kennedy Field will only last through the length of USC's fall camp. It will then be taken out of the ground in order for construction to begin on USC's new state-of-the-art football performance center. So they're always going to have a home there. There's just going to be a lot going on during the season.
Okay, so that'll be if you're watching on YouTube, the picture to the left of that main field was Brian Kennedy Field. That's going to be part of the new athletics building, football building facilities, and they'll still have the 2 side-by-side fields. So I guess that'll be the last time this fall camp, the last time we see that, and then it'll go away. And but the new turf field looks really cool. So the fact that that's ready for practice is nice.
It's nice that they won't have to get out of their routine too, and you can do the construction while you still can practice at your usual spot, even if it's not quite on the same field exactly. It's just nice to be in the same area and guys can stay in their routines. I was never much of an athlete, but I think it would be annoying if I had to take like a bus to go to practice when I could usually walk or something like that. I'm glad they're avoiding that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Also, want to talk about the Trojan Coaches Club that we spoke at. It was in Old Town Torrance at the Crest Sports Bar. So Connor and I were both there. Featured speakers, and we had Haley Tucker from House of Victory. I thought she did a really nice job. That was, I think, her first kind of event talking about her time at House of Victory and what they do there. And she was able to procure a couple of players, Achille Arnold, the safety transfer from Oregon State, and Woody Marks, who stole the show over all of us. I mean, he was amazing, so funny, and people loved it. But they loved hearing from both the players, and I guess they liked hearing from us too, but it was mostly about the players and stuff. But a really cool event. So thanks, MD3, George, all the guys down there that put that on and having us be a part of it. It was a lot of fun. I thought you did a nice job interviewing the players, so good job with that.
Thank you. It was just fun to see Woody Marks become a fan favorite, like right in front of my eyes when he's answering all these questions with his Southern drawl, and all these USC fans are loving it. And he has that sense of humor. He's talking about Mike Leach. He's telling all these awesome stories. I just remember one guy in the middle, his face kind of lit up, and then he made a comment after, I'm going to love watching you play. It's been great to connect with you today. That was cool. If you weren't at that event, Woody Marks, I think, for that group, he's going to be a fan favorite. When he goes onto the field and people can see what he is going to do, he'll be a fan favorite. But try to watch his interviews, try to watch his social media. He's a guy only going to be here for 1 year, but enjoy the ride with him, because not only is he a really good football player, but he's a funny guy, and he just has a charm to him that a lot of fans really liked on Saturday, and that was cool to see.
Yeah, and then Achille Arnold, I thought, did a really nice job there too. The veteran coming in and sharing some insight on what's going on, transferring and playing with his little brother and all that kind of stuff. So I thought he was really good too.
He did do an awesome job as well. And I think I interviewed him. It was a little shorter than Woody. They told me just to keep talking to Woody because everyone loved him so much. But Achille definitely could have spoken some more. And he's just another guy, Ryan, when we talk about team leaders and you ask questions like who are the team leaders outside of Miller and Jonah, you hear Kamari Ramsey a lot and you hear Achille Arnold a lot too.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to some. Is there anything else you want to discuss? Any other topics? We got some questions, but
we can get to the questions. I think overall I hit on my big things. Expect to see a story about Jay Fair and Greedy Vance for me on the website and some other things as well. But the biggest things were the cohesion, Miller Moss, and learning more about the defense, how things have changed from last year to this year.
All right. Go over to the website. Ton of content over there, and 60% off an annual membership if you want to sign up, which you definitely should do. All right, here's a voicemail.
Hey, Ryan, it's Curtis. D'Anton Lynn, UCLA defense, had a defensive lineman that led the nation in sacks, was very close to it. First round pick. And they moved him all around the field. Who is going to be, in your opinion, the player that he uses that way? Moved him all around the field. Didn't know where he was going to be, which side he was going to be on. Is it going to be like Anthony Lucas? Can Bear Alexander do this? Who's it going to be, fellas? Curtis from Moreno Valley.
Thanks, Curtis.
I believe Liatu Latu was the first defensive player taken in the most recent NFL draft.
I think it was like
right?
15th or something.
But he was the first guy on
yes.
defense. So I don't know if USC has someone like that on this roster, but if he's talking about a defensive lineman, I had really high hopes for him last year, and it just didn't work. But it's interesting that Anthony Lucas is listed with the outside linebackers when we met with the team yesterday for the media day. He's a guy who has that versatile body where you can put him on the edge. Maybe in certain situations, you can put him in the middle if he's blitzing. You can have him a little bit off the line of scrimmage. So it's so tough to compare a guy to Liatu Latu because it's like trying to compare Miller Moss to Caleb Williams. It's just sort of a different ball game. But who could I see maybe doing some similar things? It would probably be Anthony Lucas for me because I think he's pretty versatile, whereas Braylon Shelby to me seems like a pretty strict edge rusher. Barry Alexander, I don't really know why you would move him from the middle of the defense. I think Anthony Lucas, you can move him around a little bit more than you would other guys.
Yeah, I think he's got that sort of the X factor that if you want to move him around and do different things with him and try to screw with the opposing offense, I think he could be that guy. But he's got to do it. He's just a potential guy right now. And if USC can get him somewhere near his potential, I think that'd be a huge boom for the defense for sure.
I do take Jonah Monheim's word to mean a lot. And I asked him who's been the toughest guy to block, and he said Anthony Lucas. So if he's giving Jonah a hard time, that's got to make you feel somewhat good, even though last season was a little bit of a disappointment for Lucas. I hope he can bounce back. 5-star guy, a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Now with the new defensive coaching staff, you hope he's healthy. It sounds like he's healthy. Like this could be a really big year for him, and if he has a huge season, that's massive.
Yeah, you need that guy to pop. We got an email from John.
John.
Says, hey, Ryan and Connor. College sports business attorney Christy Dosh did a nice detailed breakdown on the terms of the proposed House settlement. She noted something on limits that I didn't really hear discussed before, prohibiting boosters individually or collectively from NIL deals unless the license/payment is for, quote, a valid business purpose related to the promotion or endorsement of goods or services provided to the general public for profit at rates comparable to what non-athlete similarly situated would receive, and also requiring athletes to continue to make progress towards a degree in order to receive benefits. Do you think these will have real impacts on NIL? He sends a link to this. Fight on, John. I think we did talk about this. I'll give real quick thoughts and get yours, Connor. I think what the NCAA would love to do is sort of eliminate the boosters from this equation. I don't think it's going to be feasible. Any deal over $600 or more, or in total, so you can't sign like $10,600 deals. If you make more than $600, you have to go through, that deal has to clear a clearinghouse, which seems like that's a lot of deals that someone's going to have to look over. And if someone says, all right, you need to tweet, I love Bob's Pizza, and you get $1 million, they're going to say, no, that's not, a non-athlete wouldn't get that. I don't know. I think this part of the House settlement is probably going to get ripped apart by lawsuits as well. But I have heard that where they're trying to eliminate the boosters from it, but I don't know if that's going to be. It might be more of a pipe dream than anything. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Connor?
I agree with you, Ryan. They have the $20 million or however many it's going to be in-house to pay all the different athletes, but what's stopping a booster from paying a guy money to, even more money? Like, I don't know how you can legislate that. And we've seen repeatedly that gets shut down in court. I really think eventually collective bargaining agreement, union, it's going to be like the pros, cut of the TV money. It's just rapidly going that way. And maybe something happens that prevents that, where the best teams all go into one conference and there's a commissioner and they sort of do things a little bit differently, but everyone's on the same page about it. I just think the NCAA trying to legislate football is so different than trying to legislate rowing, for example. Trying to have everyone play by the same set of rules does not work. We've seen that time and time again, and this kind of sounds like a way to, well, if the rower can't get this deal, why should the football player? Because it's so different. The football player is way more valuable than the rower, with all due respect, and there's nothing you can do that will hold up in court to prevent these guys from getting paid. We've seen it already. This clearinghouse thing, everyone on my Twitter feed and a lot of people who I think are really smart and I respect just ripped on it. And I totally agree too. I love Bob's Pizza. Here's $1 million. Well, would a normal person get that? Is it illegal if that's not the case? I don't think so.
Right.
This guy has more value than this guy. That's the reality. They get the money. The other guy doesn't. Some people win. Some people lose. That's the way life works.
Yeah, so I think they're trying to legislate the booster element out of this.
Well, good luck, because then the booster will donate to USC athletics, and then I don't want to throw USC under the bus, a college program's athletics, and then they'll give the kid the money. There's always going to be workarounds. There's nothing you can do.
There would be but that way there'd still be a salary cap. And this is a way that you're just like, okay, the school's paying $22 million, but the boosters are still going to pay 10 more.
Is this a salary cap? Because
No,
I don't think they call it. If it was,
they don't call it a salary cap.
Exactly.
It's
if it was
trying to be a salary
exactly, then be a salary cap is what I would say.
Right, but then you have to be an employee. So they're trying to limit it this way, and then also say, well, boosters can't ship in. Well, boosters were paying before it was legal. Then it became legal, and now you're trying to make it illegal. It's not going away. Boosters have been paying athletes for a long time. It's going to keep happening. But you made it legal, and now they're going to fight you on. They're going to say, well, you need some clearinghouse. I don't see how that's feasible to add these levels of bureaucracy to all of this stuff. Just to say, you're basically trying to determine, is this a real NIL deal or not? To USC's credit, they're still trying, they still try to do every deal as a real NIL deal. They're still hey, you get paid this much money, you have to do this many events. A lot of places aren't doing that. And so there's still people following kind of different rules. I just don't think you're going to be able to get it. If this house settlement thing is adopted, all of those aspects of it, USC's in a good place because I think they already do that. But the places that don't and the boosters that don't, they're going to fight it. And I don't think this will stand up in court. So we'll see. But that is part of the settlement. But not every part of the settlement is going to be as well received or will be, it's good. Some parts of the settlement will be challenged, and I think this is going to be one of those.
I totally agree.
Scott in Houston wrote in, how bullish are you guys on USC this season? Personally, my base case is 8-4, which would be somewhat respectable given the schedule. USC has averaged over 40 points per game in each of Riley's first 2 seasons. Certainly, I expect that number to decline this season with a difficult schedule, while the defensive numbers improve drastically. In parentheses, it says, we hope. Riley appears to be hedging on 2024, given his media day comments, but I'm taking a longer-term view and feel that the recent national media criticism of Riley is a bit unwarranted. Hoping to get to Vegas on Labor Day weekend, Scott in Houston.
It's the $1 million question. I sort of look at it like this. Yes, the team is closer, but I feel like the talent level overall is it fair to say maybe a little below last season? I guess with football, you got to talk about every different position group, so maybe that's crazy to say. I kind of feel like the offensive line last year was better, so that makes me a little bit nervous because they weren't
talent might be better.
Good.
They might perform better this year.
Yeah, different coaches are going to help. I just think the schedule is a little tougher, and the talent overall on defense is better, probably, and you have way better defensive coaches. That, of course, counts for something. I just don't look – I feel like it's a steady build to be really good, and you don't just kind of come out of nowhere. Maybe that's different now with the transfer portal, and I could be off on that.
They did year one. They came out of nowhere. But
True. But they had a generational quarterback, and
Yeah.
they had Jordan Addison, and I'm not quite as bullish as some. I could certainly see him getting to 8 wins. I think 9 wins would be a great season, and you should take that. Maybe some people think that's too harsh. I'd be over the mood with 9 wins. With the schedule, I mean, at Michigan, LSU to begin the season, Notre Dame, It's not easy, man. There are some tough games. Utah State, in my opinion, is the only one that you can say that's a guaranteed win. The rest of them, they're not toss-ups. USC should win most of them. It's different than last year, though. You knew you were beating Stanford. You knew you were beating Nevada. You knew you were beating San Jose State. There were some other bad teams there early in the year. It's just different this year, and I think it's going to be really challenging. I hope they do better than last season. I just got to see what it looks like against LSU before I have some big opinion, but I'm probably a little bit less bullish than the emailer.
I'm a little more bullish, I guess, a little more optimistic, but I would say, to me, 8-4, and it always depends what it looks like.
Yeah.
But the schedule's good enough that if you go 8-4, I think that's a good improvement over last year because the schedule's harder.
I agree with that.
There's a lot more things going on. I did earlier before we did this show, did the Podcast of Champions, interviewed a guy from Michigan and a guy from Minnesota. You got PJ Fleck at Minnesota, his 8th year. USC plays him on the road. It's early in October. It should be an improved team. And, that's not going to be an easy game. But that's one you got to look at. That has to be a win. There's a lot of games on the schedule that you're like, hey, Rutgers is a lot better. Oh, my God. Dylan Royola. You're doing all these crazy things in Nebraska. Matt Rule has, turned every program around. And they had all these close losses last year. That's not going to be easy. Penn State. Obviously at Michigan, the national champion winner, at Washington, the national championship, participant, LSU. There's just so many games that if you go 8-4 and look pretty good, and you have to win some of these games that are toss-ups. So I think it would be an improvement. If you get to 9-3, yeah, I think you could be in the playoff at 9-3. So I'm in the same boat. 8-4 would be sort of my baseline. And if you can do better than that, that's pretty darn good. But getting to 8-4, I think, would be pretty decent too.
I think it's 7 or 8 wins would be my prediction right now. Everyone, when they go undefeated and win the national championship, Ryan, you can fire me and we'll clip this and we'll all laugh. But the schedule's tough. Didn't even talk about Penn State either. The way that they recruit, especially on defense, there's some damn good defenses on this schedule. Michigan, Penn State, Rutgers, Nebraska, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
It's tough, man.
A lot of teams that can be in the playoff that are on USC's schedule. So, and it's USC could probably control. Does LSU go to the playoff? If they lose to USC, it might be tough. They could make a run in the SEC and stuff. But Penn State, they've been that perennial 10-2 team that can't beat Michigan or Ohio State. But there was only a 14 playoffs; they don't get in. 10-2, they're in. Well, USC can stop them from going 10-2, So USC can control some of these teams' playoff, destinies if they're able to go out and win some of these games. We got a couple questions from the chat. Touchdown USC. How has Taylor Mays' role changed since the limitation of quantity of number of coaches was relaxed?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I know he has done a nice job in the recruiting space, getting guys excited. I forget who I talked to, but I interviewed one recruit, and he said Taylor Mays sat down with a group of official visitors and talked all about how USC prepared him for the NFL, and that helped. But in terms of actual game day, on-the-field coaching stuff, would have been a good question for Media Day yesterday. I wish we had this one earlier. This always confuses me too, Ryan, because technically wasn't Cliff Kingsbury not supposed to be on the field last season as an analyst, and he just was. So I don't really know if USC was abiding by that rule last season and how much the analyst roles will change.
Yeah. It's that's kind of a gray area, but he was more involved in the Holiday Bowl prep and tackling got better. Yeah,
because he got promoted, or he got bumped up when Dante left.
But now he can be more involved too, so I think that'll be helpful. Swayze, what are the new rules for kickoffs this year? Will Zach Branch get chances to return kickoffs?
I need to read up on it, or I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I don't.
There's new ones in the NFL. Are there new ones in college too?
I didn't think the college kickoff rules changed, but I thought they talked about or something, but I could be wrong. I don't remember.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
if there is some new rule, whoops.
Yeah.
I don't think there is, but if there is.
I didn't think there was.
Whoops.
But Donald had one last question. Hello. Will you guys be putting together a meetup in Las Vegas? All right.
Yeah, what's the latest, Ryan?
So I had talks with people that were going to do like a joint LSU USC kind of Friday night gig. And I hadn't heard back, and I reached out and didn't hear back. And then I texted one of the guys that was involved, and he's like, yeah, we're in. And then I didn't hear back from him. So I'm trying to finalize that, get something. It would be at the talk is at Circa, which is downtown at that cool pool. What is it, the pool? I forget what they call it. The stadium pool or stadium pool or something like that. Cool place. I mean, it's huge TVs over the pools. And so that's sort of the plan right now. I will let you guys know as soon as we figure it out, but we got to get it figured out pretty soon. But it's Vegas, so I'll be doing something. I love Vegas. So
Ryan Vegas Abraham.
I do love Vegas. I have a lot of fun in Vegas, and I just love going. So it's good. All right. Well, I've been talking for a lot.
Yeah, you did a show before this,
yeah,
right?
Basically the last 3 hours I've been talking since like noon. But yeah, it was fun. We will continue to do House of Victory interviews with players. And I think the in-person thing over the weekend, people got to see, hear from Woody Marks for like 20 minutes and hear from McKilly Arnold. And I think they've really enjoyed that, and it made them more connected to the players. And when Woody Marks runs the ball, they're going to be like, I remember him, he's great, and they're going to be rooting for him. And we're trying to do that too with these interviews with House of Victory. So we get to talk to a guy for half an hour and let you get to know them more as a person. And who are you rooting for? I know some people that followed college sports and athletics for a long time feel kind of disconnected now that money is a big part of it. So this is a way, I think, sort of to connect fans with the players, because there's a lot of great stories from these players and a lot of great people. And just because they're getting some money doesn't make them greedy or bad or anything like that. So we'll keep doing these throughout fall camp. We'll have our regular interviews from camp. You get like 5 minutes of a player after practice. But on this show, we'll be able to continue doing more in-depth interviews with players. If there's a player you want to hear from, let us know. And because we put in requests with House of Victory. And if there's someone you really want to hear from, we haven't talked to you yet, let us know. And we'll do our best to bring it to you.
Excited.
I am too. Fall camp tomorrow.
Woo!
Woohoo! All right, so that's going to wrap things up for Mr. Connor Morrissette, triple-double himself, coming from hoops, switching back to football. I am Ryan Abraham. Hope you guys all enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.